This is Dave from Bay Stencil. Let's talk a tiny bit about the aesthetic of stencil art, like what's good and what's bad. This will help you understand what we're trying to do when we get an idea for a stencil and how we execute on that idea. A stencil is a mask that you lay down and then paint over, reproducing a pattern. The most common use of stencils you see every day is markings on the street. The most famous stencils are the ones by Banksy. You use a stencil so that you can produce the shapes of an outline really precisely over and over again if you like. A stencil image can be just one color on a background, like our street markings. Notice how when we paint on different surfaces, we leave a box when we paint on the light surface. Sometimes this is the desired effect, but more often we want the subject of the stencil to float in space a little bit. So we try to find a surface that's the right color to put our foreground color down onto it. Sometimes you don't have a lot of time to put down a stencil, so you want just a single color that provides high contrast really quick. And then other times you might have all day and want to make something really elaborate and beautiful and multicolored, multi-layer. Multi-layer stencils are great. I like to do a three-tone stencil where one of the colors is present just from the surface, like the surface is one of the colors. So it's pretty common for the surface to take the place of either the lightest layer or the mid-tone layer, the middle layer, but the surface can also be the darkest layer. Notice that you can reproduce all the colors so that the surface color doesn't show through at all. But I've never found a case where this looks really interesting as a final result. If you're covering the entire surface with paint, then you might as well print a poster and paste it on the surface. That's cheaper and easier and probably more aesthetically appealing than stenciling multiple layers just to cover the surface. If you don't have a choice about the surface you're painting on, for example, you need to stencil an image on a door, then choose the color or tone from your image that most closely matches the surface relative to the other colors you're using in that image. Let's talk for just a minute about color and value. Probably the easiest way to get a stencil image to be understood by the person looking at it is by using shades of gray, which we call values from white to black. But shades of gray can get boring. A nice way to mix it up is to use different colors for each layer, but to respect the dark light value of each layer. So basically you're creating an image that will make sense in terms of shades of gray, but you add color, maybe it's even random color, to make the image more artistic or more interesting. Sometimes the color adds meaning to an image, and the color should be present in a specific place in order for the image to make sense. Then, if it's important to you, just get the colors right. So you took your image, you created your image, and you probably already know what it looks like. And you'll probably always recognize your image in the stencil. But if you want other people to recognize the image in the stencil, you need to test it out to see how it reads with somebody who has never seen the image. Generally, the more detail a stencil has and the more layers, the more easily it will be recognized. But if a stencil has too much detail, it can be difficult to cut and difficult to paint, and what's more, it can become very fragile with repeated use. So let's try to get our image to be recognizable with the least detail possible. That's the goal and the aesthetic of the stencil.